welcome to the conversation about the underrepresented GT population. I am Sherry Johnson. It is my pleasure to serve as a guide along the journey as we discuss the culturally and linguistically diverse gifted learners. We will be covering a few objectives. We're going to identify the characteristics of the culturally and linguistically diverse gifted students. We're going to look at barriers to identification. We're going to discuss best practices for meeting their needs and discuss the role of the culturally responsive educator. So, as we think about the linguistically diverse gifted student, who is this individual? According to TEA, he or she is a child or youth who performs at or shows the potential for performing at a remarkable high level of accomplishment when we are comparing them to students with the same age, experiences, or environment. And this is important, whose first language is not English. So, linguistically diverse gifted students are compared with other linguistically diverse students. So, that's an important consideration for us to keep in mind. As a part of the engagement, you watch this video. I'm going to ask you to watch it again, but this time you're going to get some purpose for watching. It is talking about President Obama's trip to Jamaica. And as a linguistically diverse individual, I pull this clip for several reasons. One, I can definitely relate to the conversation taking place, the one spoken and unspoken. But there are four phrases that captures the essence of the culturally and linguistically diverse individuals. And I want us to take a moment to look at it a little bit closer. First is greetings massive. I want you to notice the way the audience respond when he said greetings massive. He's going to say Wagwan Jamaica. It's a good question. Translation, what's going on Jamaica? Another phrase he used is big up UWI. UWI is the University of West Indies. And towards the end, he said, I like the vibe here. Pause the video at this moment. Get a piece of paper. Write down those few words. Greetings massive. Wagwan Jamaica, or you can write the English translation, what's going on? Big up and the word vibe. Go ahead, pause, and then return. Okay, now we're going to watch a video again, and I want you to make a note of what you think the words communicate. One of the things about individuals in poverty, they're able to communicate a lot more with a few words. When we talk about the economically disadvantaged gifted learner, we talked about it a little bit. So I want us to put what we're learning in practice. Are you ready? Okay, so let us hear that video one more time. Again, we're highlighting the culture and the language of the people. Notice the handshake going on, but later on, notice he's going to embrace the Jamaican. No proximity.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Greetings, massive. Hey. Wagwan, Jamaica. Can everybody please give Aubrey a big round of applause for the great introduction? I want to thank the University of the West Indies for hosting us. Big up, UWI. Thank you. Yeah, I've been making myself at home here. It is great to be in beautiful Jamaica. Not only because I'm proud to be the first president of the United States to visit in more than 30 years, but because I just like the vibe here.
Okay, so clearly I like that video for more than one reason. As a Jamaican, I can relate. So when he said, greetings, massive, 2 words, but it conveyed to me a whole lot more. Just those 2 words, greetings, massive.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Greetings, massive.
When I heard greetings, massive, what I heard, what I translate, what I understood him to say, beautiful, warm, loving Jamaicans, thank you for being here today to welcome me. I acknowledge your uniqueness as a people of rich culture and heritage. I salute you. 2 words, an entire paragraph communicated. That's talking about culturally, linguistically diverse.
Wagwan, Jamaica.
Did you hear the crowd's reaction to Wagwan Jamaica? I'm going to tell you that when I heard the first time, I had similar reaction. People of the lush green island of Jamaica whose heart embodies warmth, hospitality, and friendship. I want you to know that I desire to get to know you, and I'll openly embrace all that you're willing to share with me, whatever is going on. That's what I heard when he said, Wagwan Jamaica. What's going on, Jamaica? It wasn't talking to individual, but the collective union. Our motto is out of many, one people. He recognized that by talking to us and using very specific words to communicate that. When he said big up Huey, the phrase big up could be translated be acknowledged, be proud of your accomplishment, you're worthy of emulation. Big up Huey, the University of West Indies. When I heard University of the West Indies, I want to acknowledge your presence in the education community. Be proud of your accomplishments. Be proud of the level of hospitality, organization, and creativity displayed as you host this event. The linguistically diverse individuals have a lot to share. One of the characteristics is their ability to communicate in their native language. They might have difficulty expressing their thoughts in English. So that is one of the reasons if we're able to tap into their native language and let them use that, we're going to be able to see their gifts and their talent shining through. They may display high levels of visual memory or auditory memory skills. And as they go through, those are the strengths that we want to tap into. We want to do a strength-based instruction instead of focusing on what it is that they don't have. Let us celebrate what they do have. These students are able to examine complicated material, most often in terms of home and family. Home-family relationships are extremely important. That's one of the connections that we make. Everything is relative, everything is related, everything has a long-lasting connection. They benefit from kinesthetic learning experiences. Let them get up, let them move, let them express themselves. Let them express themselves in movement, let them express themselves visually, let them express themselves in their language. Because that is when you're going to see their gifts and their talents coming through. Okay. After watching that video clip, I know I was talking a little bit faster than usual. So now I'm reminding myself that I need to slow my speech pattern down. That is one of the things that I have to remain cognizant of, even in my communication with others. In Texas, there are more than 30 languages that are spoken. 34% of Texas residents speak another language. 85% of that group speak Spanish. It's a linguistically diverse school that we're working in. Yet there's some barriers to identification that we have to address. The first one, students who are less fluent in English or individuals who have an accent are viewed as having lower cognitive abilities. Because we sound different, and you notice I said we, it doesn't mean we're not thinking at a high level. Students who are less fluent in English or those who have an accent may not be able to express themselves, and that becomes a barrier to being identified for the gifted programs. Language differences tend to coincide with cultural differences. So there are some things that are culturally frowned upon that for other cultures is worth celebrating. Let us think, for example, about eye contact. We communicate with our eyes. In some cultures, maintaining eye contact demonstrates respect, focus, and intrigue. In other cultures, not maintaining eye contact actually demonstrates these characteristics. So when students who are not part of the eye contact maintaining culture are told to focus by looking at the teacher, it sends a message that their cultural norm is unacceptable. For example, students from many Latin American and Asian cultures show respect by avoiding eye contact with authority figures. On the contrary, in mainstream American culture, avoiding eye contact is often viewed as disrespect. So, this is what we're talking about. What cultural differences will prevent the student from accessing information and program services? It goes to lack of professional development coupled with deficit orientation. With deficit orientation, some teachers are focusing on what the students do not have. They're seeing cognitive delays, they're seeing lack of fluency in English, they're seeing all the things that the students do not have, except what the students do have to offer. So those become barriers. There are lots of additional barriers, but those are the main ones. But let us hear from some individuals who have experienced it firsthand.
I came to America when I was 3 years old.
I came in kindergarten, I didn't know any English.
I was usually placed in the back of the room, given crayons.
Myself, I felt like I didn't belong.
Basically, I was mainly on my own.
I had a hard time, I didn't know what was going on.
Even as a child, it was unfair to me. It felt like it wasn't right.
Personally, it was strange and difficult at the beginning.
I was never asked, to share what I had. I knew a lot. I mean, when I was sitting there and students were doing, writing numbers or adding and subtracting, I knew what they were doing. I just couldn't be a part of it because I didn't speak the language. And so I felt like essentially I was punished, for not speaking my first language. And it almost made my language something not to be desired.
In Vietnam, my mom didn't have any education, so she didn't know how to, teach me at home.
My parents, even though they didn't speak English, they were always very supportive of us and, helped us at home, made sure we had food and clothing, shelter, and their support.
Eventually, I was able to make new friends and started to dominate the language, and that helped me to fit in.
NEA has a program that not only addresses English language learners, but it also addresses the culture piece of it and the equity to provide the teachers access for them to be successful. Many of the youngsters are coming in with very limited English, speaking vocabulary and literacy skills. and the educators are reaching out for professional specific strategies that will assist them in the reading, writing, and math. Our English language learners bring a huge amount of assets, and more specifically, they bring in a wealth of what they bring in from their families, their culture, and they also help to teach our teachers, our educators, and the leadership.
When they walk into our classrooms, they're not empty vessels. You know, in the past, we used to our goal was to fill them with knowledge because we assumed they didn't have any. Today we know better. Today we understand that they are rich, their experiences are valued. I think that one of the most important things about this training is to have the awareness of our English language learners and to make sure that we're meeting their learning needs, that we are aware not only of who they are, but what they need us to do for them so that they are academically successful.
ELLs or English language learners do not come to the classroom with nothing to offer. They have not only funds of knowledge, but also they come with plenty of understanding of how to work in a classroom.
ELL children bring a lot of diversity that just enriches the classroom. Everyone has their own culture and they bring their traditions to share with one another. So they do have experiences, and we can all learn from things that they, come with from whichever country they're from.
I think it's important for the teachers to know, because as a second language learner myself, I can make connections to my students. But some teachers don't speak another language, so they go to school and they learn it this way. And this probably opened up their mind to different strategies and different way to connect to their students. And what I would tell my parents during parent conference, or when they have concerns about their child, and they would tell me, oh, I don't teach them Spanish at home. I go, no, 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 no. I want you to teach them Spanish at home because I want them to make that connection.
The most meaningful thing for me that a teacher could do for a child is make them feel welcome and make them feel valued and appreciate who they are, where they come from, to as much as possible allow them to feel like they are an important part of your classroom, because they have a lot to contribute and they have a lot to share if you just explore a little bit and allow them to, to bring out the best in themselves.
We trained them, right? That's another way of programming. Good job. What is Ariana doing?
Making a connection. She's making a connection.
To what? To a story?
The culturally and linguistically diverse students, they do have a lot to offer. And we could go into a whole lot of details about this. And this is another presentation in which I talk about the culturally responsive educator. However, I will go through and highlight several key points from that 2 to 3 hour presentation for us. The first one I want to talk about communication and community. In your classroom, think about ways in which you can allow your culturally and linguistically diverse students to connect to their world. And then you make an effort to connect to the students' world by linking to their parents, groups, etc. As a classroom teacher, I know there are times when it is impossible with all the tasks that we have to cover to go and attend a game or a quinceanera or a banquet or whatever the occasion is that the student may invite us to. But there are times just connecting with those students will make that difference in helping them want to build that relationship, to build that trust, and to be willing to take risk in your classroom. Encourage collaborative learning. I know that there are times we might see these gifted students and they're helping others instead of focusing on their work. But I want to let you know that in some cultures, we is more important than me. Culturally, students are more invested in the success of the whole class or their group than individual accomplishments. In the classroom, students practicing that communication and community building relationships are sometimes thought to be unfocused or worrying about everybody else's business, when the truth is that is how they're making that connection, that is how they're building their community, that is how they're learning. For example, When we view the classroom as a community rather than group of individual students, the students themselves are able to make that connection and are willing to not only embrace the lessons that they need to learn, but also help to build others. So that's empathy that we're teaching just by focusing on community building relationships. So let us encourage collaborative learning as much as possible and be purposeful in the attempt to build classroom community, even if it's on the virtual platform. Establish inclusion in the classroom. Know the names of the students. There are some students whose names have very specific meaning to them and to their families. Know the names. There are lots of activities that talk about building the names of individuals. Hopefully, in a future workshop, you'll be able to hear a little bit more of some of those activities. So share ownership of learning with the students. After all, they're the ones who need that information. So share ownership so they can learn. Reflect on your practice. Are you engaging students? Are you including them in making the decisions about their learning because they're fully capable, even if they do not speak the language? Maintaining a positive attitude is one that as teachers that we can model. The first one I'm going to ask is patience with the language. I want you to think about if you're having difficulties understanding the speaker, then that person may be having the same level of difficulty understanding you. In the classroom, if you're struggling to understand your student, chances are your student is also struggling to understand you. But what compounds the issue for the student, you're using academic language and academic vocabulary that he or she may not be familiar with. So first you have to translate what you're saying in their native language and then translate it back to English and then respond. So just be patient with the process. Celebrate mistakes because it means that students are trying. And as much as possible, establish a homeschool connection, even if it is difficult to speak in the person's language. Still send them a note, still send them a voicemail. There's technology available now that will help them to translate. If you're able to translate it, drop it in Google Translate and then send it home that way. That's one way to establish a homeschool connection and maintain a positive attitude. Focus on meaning. Challenging the experiences. Challenging experiences are important for the students. Because they do not speak English doesn't mean they cannot engage in higher order thinking. So let us find ways to build the thinking and engage them as well. Focus on that language, pull that language back in the classroom, and engage in project-based lessons as much as possible, because that is when they're able to use their visual skills and they're making their thinking visible on paper, in different projects, in building something, having a school-wide presentation in which you can invite your family and friends to come in and to see it. Just make it memorable, make it meaningful. Connections and competence, connect to the student's goal and aspirations. Know what it is that the students want to do and help to guide them there. Encourage the student to self-assess because with our gifted learners, they're going to be more critical of themselves than anybody else. So allow the student to self-assess what they're doing, the growth that they need, and give them voice and choice as much as possible. Have that conversation with them, what it is that they want to do. What are some possible choices that is within the scope of the school setting, within the scope of the community that is manageable for them, but that is still going to stretch them so that they can grow. Because like everybody else, gifted learners do need the opportunity to grow. Encourage diversity. So the first thing is teach a culturally diverse lens. And what we're doing right now, this workshop, this presentation is just one way in which we're just opening that conversation to thinking about the different cultures, the different languages, and what that could mean in the classroom. This is the beginning of understanding cultural diversity and teaching through a culturally diverse lens. We talk about build a classroom community, and I said again, start with learning their names. That is one of the easiest thing. It's not going to cost anybody any money. And it's going to reinforce to the student, hey, you matter enough to me that although your name is hard to pronounce, I did not shorten it. I am willing to learn it and to use it. Encourage multiple perspective. And I like to think about the 6 thinking hats. If you have completed um, creativity for the gifted and talented learners, which is one of the courses being offered through Schoology this summer, you will be able to experience or think deeply about the 6 thinking act. It is a creativity activity. It does encourage creativity in the classroom. It does encourage multiple perspective. If you have never heard about it, just Google 6 thinking hats and you'll get an insight into what it means and how you can apply that into the classroom to encourage diversity and multiple perspectives. So there are different ways in which we can meet the needs of the culturally and linguistically diverse students, whether we're in person or in line. And this is a part of creating a culturally responsive classroom.
I want you to erase all knowledge of yourself, your race, gender, favorite food, which Real Housewives franchise you prefer. Leave all of your interests and experience at the door. Now, traditionally, school is set up assuming students can do this when they step into the classroom. Not only is it unrealistic, it's unfair. Education is the greatest human equalizer, and in a deeply divided society, education may be one of the few forms of alleviation. But if we're unintentionally offering instruction through a limited scope, we're already limiting that potential and our students. We're often so focused on compliance, we don't examine elements that are actually connected to achievement, like cultural competence. When a lesson is relevant, the student becomes a learner. Their interests are sparked and their brains ignite. And that is how we close the achievement gap. Include learners in their own learning. Groundbreaking stuff, right? As demographics shift and access to technology increases, we have to develop relevant and responsive instruction, and educational technology gives us an abundance of opportunities to do just that. Culturally responsive teaching focuses on students' cultural knowledge and frames of reference. So if we're going to meet the needs of our students and communities, we have to know who they are. Open the lines of communication. Use Google Voice to share a phone number. Even if someone leaves a message in a language you're not familiar with, you can plug the transcript of that text into Google Translate. Maybe they're not quite comfortable with communicating with school officials. Have an ongoing Google form where anyone can send info, ask questions, or provide suggestions anonymously. We can further strengthen relationships and connections with families by utilizing digital communication they're comfortable with, like using YouTube Live to virtually bring families into the school for special events or just to showcase learning. And just like we create inviting classrooms, we need to create inviting digital learning environments. On our websites, include text-to-speech and translation tools, provide accessible information through multiple means, like interactive images with ThingLink. In the classroom, integrate high-quality digital content into instruction. Take virtual field trips, create interactive learning opportunities with AR and VR that both engage and serve a purpose. Let students guide their own journey, both into learning and around the world, because both are theirs. Speaking of theirs, build digital vocabularies. I'm basically trilingual, as I'm fluent in both emoji and GIF, or GIF if you say the word wrong, and so are our students. Communicating in ways they easily understand makes our messages clearer and more personal. Speaking of personal, use technology to personalize learning. Develop and organize coherent and relevant activities and projects that build upon students' cultural backgrounds and life experiences. Promote student voice and choice. Let them decide how to show what they know with or without a device. Enable students to communicate and collaborate with audiences, including peers and experts, locally and around the country and world, using tools like Google Hangouts, ePals, and Skype. Honor individualism while facilitating collaboration, especially among diverse groups, using tools like Jamboard or Padlet. Set and communicate high expectations custom to each student and encourage them to take ownership of their performance. Show them how to access grades digitally. Explain how data works, but make them more than a number, because a teacher's effectiveness is not the growth of a score, but the growth of a student. Provide meaningful feedback. Like personalized videos in Screencastify, comment threads in G Suite. Use a collaborative doc to serve as a journal where the students can safely document and reflect, and you can personally support and guide their growth. In addition to all of this, there's one specific place we all need to start, and that's within ourselves. Reflect on what we know and what we don't know. Examine our own bias and judgment and explore where there's room to learn. Have tough conversations with ourselves and others. Growth can't happen if we're stagnant. For me, for example, I wasn't entirely sure of where hip hop fit into school, besides the usual write a rap about blank or rap Shakespeare, but I knew the kids loved it. And who can deny hip hop's longevity and reach? I mean, have you heard of a Broadway show called Hamilton? So instead of avoiding it or ignoring it, let's use its power to empower. Our students' cultures, interests, and backgrounds can no longer be left out of learning. When we know better, we do better, and we have the power and the potential to involve and empower all learners. So let's do it. Thank you.
I will also upload this video as a separate link in this course module so you can access it again. But when we're creating a culturally responsive classroom, I want us to start thinking that it's not just whether it's face-to-face, but also virtually. So we have gone over a few key points about the culture and linguistically diverse gifted learners. What is one takeaway that you'll have about the culturally and linguistically diverse gifted learners? What resonated with you? So we started off this presentation by looking at the video in which President Obama was talking patois. So we discussed a few of the phrases. We talked about greetings massive, wagwan Jamaica, big up UA. And the last one in which he said he liked the vibes. When we're talking about the vibe, it's just that feeling that you get. And as you're dealing with the culturally and linguistically diverse gifted learners, may you also tap into their vibes, their easygoing nature, their warmth, their creativity, their innovativeness, their quest for knowledge, their determination, their desire to succeed. And with you as their guide, their facilitator, their coach, and their cheerleader, I want to thank you. I am Teacher Sherry J, reminding you that together we are growing minds and changing lives.